Bolton Wanderers are back in the Championship after 7 years away. And wow, a 4-1 playoff final win. This is NTT20 Podcast. Sky Bet League One playoff final recap is sponsored by Sky Bet and the Sky Bet EFL Building Foundations Fund. You don't see many 4-1 scorelines at Wembley in a playoff final, but that's what it was, George, between Bolton Wanderers and Stockport County.
Yeah, to contextualise how rare it is to see a game like this, since fans are back in stadiums, 2021, for playoff finals, there have been 16, including this season's Championship playoff final. Only 3 of those 16 had seen over 2.5 goals, and all had seen 3 goals. There have been none with 4 goals.
Wow.
5 here.
Goodness.
And actually, it was amazing because so often, me and you are heading to the League Two playoff final after this. I reckon it'll be quite cagey. I reckon it'll be quite low scoring. It's normally like just a big ball of nerves. Whereas this game, even though it was like unbelievably hot, because it got off to such a flyer with Ruben Rodriguez scoring within the first 3 minutes, it basically meant it couldn't be that.
Yeah.
And it meant that both teams, like Bolton only really know one way to play under Steven Schumacher. Stockport had to throw everything at it, and it became just a brilliant, brilliant game. Like really, really open, really attacking. The Stockport, I would say, arguably edged the first half, which might get lost in the story of the game. The best player on the pitch for the first hour of the game until he was very surprisingly substituted was Adama Sidibe, who I'm pretty sure Stockport will get quite a lot of phone calls on Tuesday morning, given the performance that he put in, leading the line for Stockport, on the biggest stage that League One can really offer. He scored a disallowed goal that VAR intervened when he was adjudged to have fouled George Johnson, which I think was probably fair enough. Like it definitely wasn't deliberate, but it was clumsy. I think if you are making a run and you run across the back of someone's legs and you trip them up, then that's probably a foul, even if you don't mean to do it.
I think so.
Like soft, and had there been no VAR, it probably wouldn't have been given. Although I think in that situation, if you're the referee, you don't give the foul even if you think it's a foul, because you have the support, the safety net of VAR afterwards. But it didn't matter because he then scored the equaliser. Well, I mean, it probably still mattered, but he scored the equaliser 10 minutes or so later with a really smart header. And all game, like, it was interesting. I was a bit surprised to see the way that Stockport approached this game in some ways, which we'll get onto. But what they had in Sidibe, they basically just played him. They knew that Bolton would play a high line, and he just played off the shoulder throughout. And he had both, even though they were very good on the day, Farino and Johnson both really struggled to deal with his pacing behind, his ability. He's got a really good spring in him as well, which means he's useful in the air. And at half time, it kind of felt like Stockport were maybe the team in the ascendancy, but that changed.
So what, actually quickly, I want to ask about VAR in playoff finals from the perspective of being in the stadium. This is not the first year we've had VAR in playoff finals. It's probably more jarring in League One and in League Two because we never see this anywhere else. Obviously, that's the case for the Championship. But there's something about VAR in League One and League Two games that does feel quite jarring. What's it like in the ground? There were a number of incidents in this game, one of which was a red card towards the end for a pulling of the hair, Dakers Cogley on Sissoko during a passage of play where
no one really
you wouldn't have even known that had happened at the time. So what was it like in the ground? As you say, a ball of tension, and then these moments where EFL fans get to experience what Premier League fans experience in ground.
I mean, I hate VAR, and I would like it not to be involved in any football game ever again, regardless. And that's not, like last season, the VAR came in and disallowed Harrison Burrows' second goal for Sheffield United, and it did it correctly, and Sunderland went up, and that was a good use of VAR. Doesn't mean I want it to exist. Like, I think we can all deal with the fact that there's human error, and it's much easier to deal with human error when it's made in a snap decision by a referee on a pitch rather than by some guys in a room in Stockley Park. So I hate it. What I would say is Bolton basically got to celebrate 5 goals, because when Sidibe's first goal was ruled out, the reaction from the Bolton fans was as if they had scored, because it basically is a goal when it's chalked off. And that was kind of amazing. The Bolton fans were, both sets of fans, incredible. The Bolton fans, who obviously outnumbered Stockport, you've been to playoff finals. There are moments within games where you just, as a neutral, you just look at the fan base who've just scored a goal in a playoff final, and it's incredible. Whether you're looking at the fans who are closest to you, where you can see their faces and you can see them hugging, or you just look in the distance and you just see the absolute cacophony of limbs.
Yeah.
It's amazing to see. And there were so many, like the second goal, which was an own goal from Carl Wotton after Corey Adai made a really poor save, I would say, for the first goal, where he should have parried it either behind the post or done much better. It was kind of a Thierry Gale almost scuffed shot from about 30 yards that he couldn't deal with. He made a very good save from Kozia Dubry for the second goal, but could only parry it into the path of Carl Wotton, who couldn't kind of sort his feet out to stop it from going in. Huge limbs there. And
the 3-1 goal's always a good one.
Yeah, but also because Sam Dalby came on the hour mark. And this is a theme of these playoffs, is like substitutions changing games. And why any conversation now around like you have to start, like he should be starting, you start your best team. Like the majority of goals are scored in games in the last half an hour. And especially in playoff finals where it's always going to be tense and cagey and those late goals are going to matter so much. Like Dalby came on, he only played half an hour, but his impact on the game is huge. There was Rodriguez into Dalby, really good hold up play into Kozia Dubry for the second goal. It was Dalby with an overhead kick for the third goal.
That was class.
So good, like, incredible. And that was in front of the Bolton fans. And then those celebrations in the corner, where it's that moment where you basically know that you're up.
Yeah.
I hated the VAR intervention for the hair pull. Like I totally get. There have been a couple of incidences early this season in the Premier League where VAR has been used to intervene and to send a player off and to give a free kick for a hair pull, which has been a very obvious, deliberate hair pull. Like it's to a degree, it's violent conduct,
like an aggressive
exactly.
hair pull.
Like they know what they're doing in this instant, and that it feels like that has set this precedent now, where if you pull someone's hair, you're sent off.
Yeah. In
this incident, Dacus Cogley is on the turn and he's basically just grasping. Like if he pulled his shirt and he went down, it probably would have been ignored, but whatever. Like it's not a deliberate attempt to pull someone's hair, but because Sissoko has very long hair, he basically got a lock of his hair. And then no one really appealed. You can hear like a small shout from the Bolton fans. Everyone carried on playing. No one really cared. For that in a playoff final, it shouldn't matter that it's playoff final. In any game, it's quite clearly not a red card offence. It's quite clearly not something that should be punished with a 3-match ban. I don't really get why. I think because it's seemingly a new phenomenon, something has to be done this summer to basically outline when a hair pull becomes that, because it didn't really feel necessary.
No material impact on the results.
No.
Bolton were going to be going up.
Yeah.
But I think kind of tough to swallow for a few different reasons for neutrals and certainly for county fans as well. The penalty dispatched by Ruben Rodriguez, who Dalby changed the game off the bench, and I'm glad to give him his flowers for that. But Ruben Rodriguez, I imagine you're going to enjoy telling me about his performance, because it's 2 years since he got 2 assists for Oxford, beating Bolton as you went up to the Championship, here on the score sheet twice.
Yeah, kind of bittersweet, because I wish he was still an Oxford player, really. But no, I loved it. I love him as a fan. I love him as the way that he plays. He's unique in terms of a skill set at League One, because he is both a very creative player and a very good technical player, whilst also being just an absolute dog. He works incredibly hard. He's so scrappy. He started the game playing as a 10. He dropped back a bit deeper once the substitutions were made, and Dalby came on. He was brilliant throughout the game. Him and Sheehan were both excellent. As I mentioned at the top, there were some ways that Stockport approached the game that surprised me. When Oxford beat Bolton a couple of years ago, and it was kind of a widely seen bit of a tactical masterclass from Des Buckingham and his team. He did a coach's voice afterwards, and it was very clear to anyone watching that the way that we set up for the game was that Mark Harris would basically stand and screen in front of Santos, and I think Toll, and basically just block the passing line into Sheehan wherever possible, and basically force Bolton to have the ball in their centre backs. But yesterday on Sunday, because Sidibe was playing off the shoulder, and because you got Norwood, who's obviously a deeper midfielder, there was just this huge space in the middle of the park where Sheehan was able to basically do whatever he wanted to and kind of run the game. It wasn't necessarily that the ball was always going into him, but it was when he got on the ball, he was in exactly the kind of positions where you wouldn't want him, where he could hurt teams, and his passing range is obviously very, very good. So that felt surprising to me. I mean, I guess you can't really play a striker like Sidibe and then also commit another man forward to do that role. But given in a playoff final 2 seasons ago, Sheehan was hooked on 65 minutes, having had no impact on the game. It was surprising to see him being able to run it.
Yeah, well, the master tactician here. Therefore, Steven Schumacher takes Bolton into the Championship, and it's fantastic from his point of view. You know, Schumacher's Plymouth Argyle team were one of the most entertaining and successful League One teams that we can remember. He got rewarded, in a sense, off the back of that by getting a so-called bigger job at Stoke City, but he is one of now about half a dozen managers who've all had plenty of success elsewhere to be chewed up and spat out by Stoke City. And for each of those managers, that's had a different impact. Thankfully, most of them have been able to bounce back. Nathan Jones, Gary Rowett, others to a certain extent. And hopefully, well, this shows that Schumacher has been able to get another job, get his confidence back, get his mojo back, and put what is now a pretty recognisable Steven Schumacher imprint on a team. And it's a pretty fun imprint, George. Great football, uber attacking. When things are great, you know, you want to be supporting a team like this. They may not have finished in the top two, and in some ways possibly underperformed a little bit over 46 games, but he's certainly done what Ian Evatt wasn't able to do, and that is take Bolton back to the Championship after a number of seasons where they've missed out either in the playoffs or not been enough over 46 games.
Yeah, it's good. I saw Carl Dempsey post on Instagram a photo saying the OGs, and it was him, Toll, Sheehan, and one other, basically the players who are still there from the Evatt era, who lost over two legs against Barnsley in the playoff semi-final, lost in the playoff final against Oxford. Like, they've been knocking on the door for so long, and I've seen a lot of Argyle fans quite upset by Schumacher's post-match interview where he said that this was his, he was like, Plymouth was amazing, but this is my biggest achievement. Which is surprising. But he basically said because the club that Bolton is and the pressure that comes with that. I kind of get that as a fan, you're like, hold on, you massively overachieved and got 100 points with a mid-table budget. But then I guess for him, when the pressure is on because you've been supported and the budget is there and the expectation is there, to then deliver on that is probably a different kind of relief and a different kind of achievement, even if more expected maybe. But yeah, I really like him. It's good to see managers who've had a tough time elsewhere, have some success. I'm sure he'd have learned from the Argyle experience not to necessarily jump at the next kind of shinier job that comes along.
What do we think about Bolton as a Championship side next season? I mean, it looks like a bit of a brute of a division in many ways, but they come up. You know, it's hard to know exactly what their budget will be, but it was a very strong budget in League One. They are a club that has certainly a Championship-sized fan base, and that helps a lot with one's organic revenue. They have an amazing ownership group that have done a lot for the club to rebuild it from a community aspect to actually treat the club and its fans seriously, where obviously it had been basically run into the ground previously and dropped all the way down to League Two, but also have provided, obviously, like all owners, quite a lot of funds to build a squad like this, very competitive for the level, full of great League One players who I'd be excited about stepping up to the Championship, but they're certainly not absolute money bags either. What do you think about Bolton back in the Champ?
This is a club with a recent history of overspending that really nearly kind of had a pretty damning impact on the football club. But it's very hard to compete in the Championship unless you're going to overspend. So given the way they've gone about their business in League One, you look at the likes of, for example, Charlton, who spent a lot of money last summer. Or you look at someone like Oxford, who didn't spend necessarily Championship level transfer fees and paid the price for the relegation in the second season. So, that's like the frank reality. Like I wrote about it on NT20.com. Like that's the frank reality. You either go up and you behave like a Championship club, and that comes with massive risk, or you try and box clever, and that can probably sustain you for so long, and then eventually you'll probably come down again. So I mean, it'll be, given the way that they've gone about their business in League One and the ambition, I would assume that they'll probably be pretty punchy in the summer, but we'll have to see.
Absolutely. As for Stockport County, they lose in the playoffs again. It happened last season. It happened last time they were in the playoffs in League Two. It happened the last time they were in the playoffs in the National League as well. It's actually kind of amazing that a club could have such a bad, recent, regular playoff record, while also going from the National League North to the Championship, to League One in the space of a decade. So a difficult club to talk about right now, in that every judgment I make about them is based on their own incredible high standards over the last few years.
Yeah.
But I can't pretend that in some ways things haven't quite felt 100% Stockporty this season, and that came from the very start of the season where results were okay, but underlying performances were concerning, and that was a concern clearly held by the manager as well, because you could sense his frustration with not necessarily building the solid, dependable team that he'd had in previous seasons. Up and down season that nonetheless ended with them finishing third, losing in the Virtue Trophy final, losing in the League One playoff final. Like, by so many basic measures, it's another excellent season for Stockport County. But again, by their own high standards, they probably they have fallen short. And as I mentioned in the preview, with the departure of Simon Wilson, who's been the director of football and then the CEO, huge part of this project, which has taken them, let's be clear, on an unbelievable journey that I know their fans are pretty level-headed about this. It's bloody hard to lose in the playoffs twice in a row, but certainly the amazing Stockport County fans we have on NTT20 squad, they are able to be big picture about this and understand the journey that they've been on and the benefit that they have enjoyed under Mark Stott's ownership, which continues, by the way. Simon Wilson's not the money man, but he's certainly been a strategy man. And Dave Challoner's, he's always pretty unhappy after a defeat. So you can take what he says after with a bit of a pinch of salt, but there certainly was one answer about his and the club's future heading into next season that made it feel like it could be a big couple of months ahead and things might not look so similar next season.
Yeah, I think when someone like Wilson moves on, it can often be the catalyst for a bit of change, and I'll be intrigued to see how they approach the summer. But in terms of the game, like there have been previous playoff campaigns with Stockport where they've had amazing league seasons, and then for some reason haven't really looked themselves in the playoffs. I don't think yesterday was really that. I know the scoreline isn't great, and it looks like they didn't really turn up, but they did. Like for an hour, there was little between the two teams.
That's a good point, and they were brilliant in the semis, of course.
Exactly. So like there's it's almost like the reverse in a weird way, even though they finished third. I cannot understand, and it's fair to say that he couldn't understand either, why Sidibe was subbed off after an hour. Like it felt like a premeditated substitution. And his reaction, which I think is going to land him in some trouble, because he kicked a full water bottle incredibly hard into the crowd, which, and there were some unconfirmed rumours that it might have struck a fan, a Stockport fan. But he was angry and he walked down the tunnel, shaking his head, looking really cross. Right. So that kind of changed the game. Like Alafe was in no way really effective. He had one good
big
chance when he came on.
2-1, yeah.
That Bonham made a really smart save from. But it just felt like that really played into their hands. Similarly, we spoke about in the preview how it was Louis Barry versus Mario Cozier-Dubry. Like one player had a very good game. One player I genuinely didn't see him touch the ball. Yep. Like he did absolutely nothing, Barry. Which again, it's a difficult. He's the kind of player where he's going to have days where he doesn't do that. And the subs that came on, Diamond had basically no impact on the game at all. Sheehan won the Norwood versus Sheehan battle. Norwood was by no means bad, but we didn't see what he's capable of either.
And Big Kyle Wootton, the makeshift centre-back, who for 9 games had done magnificently well, scores the own goal at 2-1. It's a horrible end to that particular story. I feel very bad for him.
But that's kind of where I'm like getting at, is that even though Stockport were good for an hour, you actually look through the team and it was basically led by their striker, who was just causing real damage in behind. And as soon as that threat went, their threat went.
He's left a big impact on you as old Sidibe.
I think everyone who was there, he was just clearly the best player on the pitch.
Amazing piece of recruitment from St Johnstone in January. Yeah,
and especially in that kind of given his recent non-league past. Like there's no one who's like, I'd be amazed if anyone, apart from maybe some Bolton fans who wouldn't see it that way. But yeah, I think it was pretty obvious that he was the class player on the pitch when he came off. I'm sure a lot of Bolton fans thought, thank God for that. So I'll be intrigued to see what happens. It wouldn't surprise me if the Challoner and Stockport story might be winding to an end. Like football's cyclical. He hasn't cut a particularly happy figure at points this season. But having said that, as you said, they finished third. Like it's
I keep having to remind myself that. It's like, as you can tell,
the amazing work they've done.
I'm finding it confusing to work this all out, and obviously it's all very fresh and all very new. So it'd be interesting to hear from some county fans in the comments, actually, because your take on things will be probably more important than ours at this point. But we'll obviously be keeping a close eye on things over the summer. We'll be covering transfers very closely on ntt20.com. We will be continuing to do some podcasts on this feed as well. But George and I are heading to the States for the World Cup with the England pod, which is our sort of brother podcast of this one.
That's why we've made it 45 degrees in this studio, just as preparation for when we get there.
We'd love you to come on the World Cup journey with us, assuming that you listening to this may well be an English football fan and interested in how England do at the main event this summer. We're going to be covering it with daily podcasts throughout the group stages and almost daily during the knockout stages. We take an approach, if you haven't listened to it before, of being massive England fans and not apologising for that, and certainly not being snide and treating it like some sort of chore. We absolutely love it. We absolutely hate it when it's hard to watch and when things don't go how you want them to go. And so there's great chance of glory and quite large chance of disaster. And hopefully listening to the podcast each day and kind of coming on that journey with us will help you enjoy the World Cup. And so please do now search for the England pod on Spotify or Apple or YouTube. We are there. And if you just subscribe and join us for the summer, preview content already underway. So join us over there. Congratulations to Bolton fans. You'll be watching the championship segment of NTT20 pod next season. And it'll be great to have you. Special congrats to our mate, Matt Harrison, who's our favourite Bolton Wanderers fan by some distance. A great man, and pleased to see him happy. Cheers to Sky Bet and the Sky Bet EFL Building Foundations Fund for sponsoring the League One segment all season long. And to you, go well.